Okay, so welcome to the fourth session of this competency mapping discussion, and what we are going to discuss here is that actually how this exercise is carried out. What we have been discussing about tools and techniques for data collection using various techniques, then how we go about building and developing a competency mapping model, and then how actually we develop a profile or map the competencies of the people. Now, we have to see that what are the various steps that is involved and how do we go about mapping the competencies. Okay. So, we will take up an actual exercise and we develop it step by step to see that how it can be done. Okay. So, we look into this. So, see that various steps that is involved in the competency mapping. Okay. So, the first step is basically you identify what are the competencies that would be required at the organization level, which could be critical for the growth and development of the organization. Okay. So, this is basically related to what you call the organizational requirement in terms of their competencies, in what way they should be competent enough, so that they can grow and develop, right. So, that is related to organizational competencies. Then you have to identify certain competencies using either dictionary or other things, okay, which is basically are which can be observed through behaviors. Okay. So, basically you are going to define observable behavioral definitions through dictionary. Okay. So, these are the competencies which would be required for an organization when it comes to identifying their core competence, and this has to be there in order to perform very well. Then move to the third level. Okay. Then you define the generic roles with the definition for the company as a whole. Okay. Because you know that there are certain generic competencies which is required by the organization in terms of their competence they should have, right, like strategic thinking, being creative, innovative. So, these kind of generic competencies which will be required by all organizations, right. So, we identify that and then we move to the fourth level. Then you are going to create a competency matrix for the people, which could be actually leading to the growth and development of the organization. So, you need to develop a matrix in terms of what are the different competencies given in a role is required, and that is where you are going to identify different kind of competencies in terms of generic, behavioral, technical, functional, whatever it is, right. And then for each competency you have to identify its criticality. It means what is the importance of that particular competency in contribution to performance, right, because not all competencies would be equally contributing to performance. So, that is why you are going to identify criticality that is required for each of these competencies. We will give an example to explain it. We are just talking about the various steps that is involved here, right. And then for each critical competencies, now we have identified competencies, the level of criticality is another important thing. So, what is the level of competency, that particular competency that is required? So, for example, when we are talking about leadership quality, right. So, the leadership quality is the competency which could be required at the junior level, middle level and the senior level. So, you have identified that this is a critical competence for senior level, right. It means this critical competence at a senior level management is required. So, this is a critical competence, there is more critical competent, right, but it may not be that critical at a very junior level, because it does not require any supervision, the job does not require any supervision. So, once you have identified criticality of competence, then you identify the proficiency level. At what level of leadership quality would be required? Definitely for a senior manager, it could be say 7 or 8 out of 10. On a 10-point scale, you need say 7, 8 or even 9 or even 10 also. So, you say that okay, the competence level of leadership is 9 for this given job, right. And this is a critical competence which requires or which is related to higher performance. Okay. So, when you are going to develop competencies, role competencies, you identify all the competencies, the extent to which they are contributing to the performance and the level to which that would be required for a given job. All this is to be identified. Then the fifth level, you are going to also identify the behavioral and functional competencies for the given role. Not only the generic competencies, but also the behavioral and what is more general, what you call the managerial competencies, and also the technical and functional competencies. And you go through the same process, its criticality and also the level at which it would be required. Okay. And then you need to define each of these competencies, whether it is functional skills, whether it is the behavioral skills or whatever it is. And then you see that who is performing the role, right. Then the next stage you are going to assess the role holder in his skill through echo. Echo actually this in particular case actually is a customer satisfaction tool. So, you are going to see that whether this particular skill is there in the individual to satisfy the. So, a software tool basically which can be used for measuring the satisfaction of the customers, maybe internal or external. Okay. Then you also go through assessment from of functional skills through the supervisors and the head of the department of that particular individual, and next you are going to match the holder competencies with the role based competencies, and then that is actually helps you to identify the gap in the competencies, right. And based on that you are going to develop certain action plan, so that the person is able to develop those competencies, which could be related to talent acquisition, could be related to performance management or related to learning and development systems, right. And then ultimately you have feedback. In terms of evaluation, you see that whether the person has been able to develop those competencies or not, right. So, these are 12 steps that is involved in a model building, so far as a competency mapping exercise is carried out. So, what we are going to discuss now is that how do we go about doing it, right. So, we will take up one by one each of these steps and see what are the things that need to be done. Okay. Now, we look at this first step. As I told you, the first stage you are going to review, finalize and accept company wide competencies, which are critical for the growth of the organization. Okay. So, in this particular case where you are going to take an organization is a hypothetical case, and in this case these are the competencies which have been identified. Okay. If you look at these competencies, these are generic competencies which is required for the growth and development of the organization. Communication, these are generic competencies, remember it. Strategic thinking, leadership, creativity, teamwork, sense of ownership, customer orientation, consumer orientation, right. So, these are the critical competencies which is required for the growth and development of the organization, and this list has been finalized using tools and techniques that we have just discussed in a particular case that has been identified. Now, once it has been identified, okay, then you also identified some other competencies which are mandatory or what you can say non-negotiable. It means that it must to have micro planning and execution by the organization, how it is going to differentiate itself from other competitors, what its quality orientation, right. Now, so what we have done here that we have identified those competencies, some of them are must, some of them are very good competencies, right. So, once you are able to identify these competencies, that okay, these are the competencies which is required at the organizational level, right. And this exercise is carried out with the help of tools and techniques that is available to you, correct, that we have just discussed in the third session. Now, once you have identified okay, these are the competencies that we are going to take care in future, what is the next step? Look at this. You need to define each of these competencies. So, you have to give a verbal description of each of these competencies in your context. Now, if you look at this, in this case you will find that all the competencies that have been identified, they are being provided with a definition, right. So, in some cases you will find one thing and in some cases you will find two things, like for leadership you find that how timely leader take decisions. So, their decisiveness is one area, change management, how they are going to manage change, right. So, these are the two important things which are basically change management and decisiveness. These are the two competencies which you relate with leadership. Similarly, you look at the creativity, how innovative people are, like strategic thinking, whether they are able to think strategically to develop goals and objectives for the organization or not. Similarly, whether the organization when the people have the managers or the senior managers have the sense of ownership or not. Okay. So, they have whether the commitment, support and all kind of things related to that or not. So, what I wanted to say that when once you are able to identify those competencies, you need to give a description what does it mean, specifically related to the context in which you are working of your organization, right. So, once this is identified, and similarly you see that okay, other competencies have been also identified which are important like micro planning, okay. What is the process orientation and detailing, whether it is available or not, differentiation which is going to provide you competitive advantage as an organization, because that is how it is going to contribute to success of the organization, right. So, what is your quality orientation, okay? What level of quality you expect, okay, in your products, not only your product, your system, your structure and processes, because if you have quality orientation, it is related to everything, quality of service that you are providing, quality of product that you have. Okay. So, all this is very very important competencies for the success and growth of the organization, right, that we have identified, and then second stage what we have done, we have given a behavioral description of these competencies, right. So, once these behavioral descriptions of all the competencies are given, we move to the next level, right, that is the third level. In third level what happens? Okay. These are the generic roles, okay. Executive, task under supervision, right. How much job you are going, and if you look at this example is related to identifying generic competencies related to a particular role in the same organization. So, to start with what you did at the first level, what you did is first step identified competencies, organization level, right. Second, define those competencies. Third level, what you are going to do is you are going to look at a particular role and then you are going to identify the generic competencies. In this case, you can see that it is the role of a sales, right. So, in a role of a sales, what are the generic competencies that is required, that you have to identify it. Again you go through the same process of data collection in order to identify what are the various generic competencies which is required. So, what you had done in the first two stages, identifying competencies and defining them, the same thing that you are going to do here related to a specific role, say sales people, okay. And that is where you have identified certain roles like how much work he is going to do under supervision. Okay. So, under supervision what are the different roles that is to be identified, like one role that have been identified which leads to better performances, like how much front sales is there, it means direct sales, collection, distribution for a particular assigned territory. Okay. What is his field jobs. So, all this is related to under this category. So, that is how it has been identified. How much job you are going to do independently in terms of your responsibility related to that kind of things. Similarly, what is the leadership capability that is required. Okay. Again, this is a kind of responsibility that you have to perform in order to go for sales, collection, distribution, all kind of things. Okay. Because you are also going to have certain supervisory responsibility for your lower staffs. So, how are you going to set targets for them, what processes you are going to adopt, right. Then since you being a location head or section head, what are your responsibilities as a divisional responsibilities. Okay. So, you are responsible for the responsibility of that particular location or section, right, of sales. So, how are you going to look at it, okay? Because since you are responsible for that particular division, so for meeting targets and these kind of things. Okay. So, that is a part of your responsibility. So, what kind of competencies is there, and then how are you going to interact with say HODs or the teams or the things. So, there is another part of the responsibilities. Okay. So, this one example that is given here is CKPL, that is a business group head. So, that is related to sale. This is example that is related to sale. Now, see that is how we are going to create at the next level a role competency matrix. See how it is done. So, when you are going to do it, what you do basically here? First of all, you identify the role. It could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be finance, it could be HR. Then what are the functions that he does? Then equivalent competency role you identify, and then the next level, once you have identified the competencies and you identify what are the critical competencies which contribute significantly to performance, what you are going to do is, what is the level of proficiency that is discussed here. So, you can quantify it by given on a particular scale like 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. It means that if he has just basic awareness, then the proficiency level is going to be 1. If it contributes to better performance, then 2. If he is an expert, then 3. If you are a leader, okay, then 4. So, this is the 4 levels of competencies given to a particular competency, right. And here you are going to identify criticality. Criticality in the sense of whether it is important or not, and also whether it is preferred or not, right. So, if it is preferred and important both, then it becomes more critical, right. And in the process you are going to also identify each of these this is to be done in case of each functional or technical skills, and you also need to define them, right. So, once the entire process is carried out, you are able to create a competency matrix considering all competencies, and doing this exercise, so that you are able to identify whether the extent to which these competencies are critical, okay, what is their level, a proficiency level that is required for that particular job. Okay. So, fourth level basically you are going to create matrix to look at from two perspectives, that is criticality and also the level of proficiency, right. So, criticality and level of proficiency, these are the two important things that is going to help you, and then you can visualize, okay, so these are the competencies, this is the level of competencies, and the level at which it would be required is clear to you now. So, from this look at a different role. Critical means whether it is absolute must, essential, without which success on the job is very difficult. So, that is how we are going to decide the criticality, right. Important, how you decide? Yes, whether you need to have it or not. Okay. If it is there, it means that a lack of it for the current contribution may not be deterrent and can be trained, right, whether he has it or not, right. Then whether it is preferred, not nice to have. Sometimes you know said essential qualification and desirable qualification. So, essential qualification means important, it must be there. Then we talk about preferred, whether it is desired. If it is okay, then it leads to extra value, otherwise not. If it is not, then it does not affect or deter successful accomplishment on the job, right. So, at this stage what you do? You look at these factors, and for each competencies you have to define how critical it is, how important, and whether it is necessary to have it or not, right. So, for each of these competencies you have to carry out this exercise, and then remember in the matrix we also talk about the proficiency level. Okay. It means that here we are going to compare on a relative basis that how much of a specific competency is required. Remember, if you remember, we talked about 4 different levels here. Okay. This talks about the proficiency level, from the novice to becoming a leadership, being a leader in the field, right. It means here the competency level is the highest, but you need to identify that for a given job what is the competency level which requires superior, which will lead to superior performance, and it may vary depending upon the kind of competency that you have taken. Okay. So, when you are going to identify at this stage, especially when I am talking about this identify proficiency level, you have to see that what is the level of proficiency of each of the competencies, not only its criticality, right. So, the level of competence basically it is a measure of relative competence, relative comparison, and that helps you to identify that okay, the extent to which this competency would be required for superior performance, right, and that is how we go about it. Okay. So, the first is the basic competencies, it is a macro level, yes. you know that how to do this job, right. Then at the contributory level, you move from a macro to another level, that was how to do it, competency to understand and teach the book. For example, that is taken as whether you assume I can go through this book, I can understand it, whether you can understand and teach the book to others or not. It means that you are able to contribute at the next level. Third level, expert level, not only can not only competent to understand it is, but you can even criticize the book. It means you have better knowledge, right, because you are not going to contribute to teaching, but you are also analyze that okay, how to do it, right. This is the third level, and finally, at the fourth level you become a leader. So, at the micro level, okay. Not you can not only teach, understand, criticize, but even you can write the book also on that topic. It means that your level of understanding is much higher, which leads to superior performance. So, this example is given in the context of a book. Similarly, this can be taken up in the context of a job also, right. For example, if you are a person who has been given the job as an HR manager. So, basic understanding that you know what are the various functions that HR person performs. Second level, you are able to perform those functions, right. Third level, you are not going to perform those functions, but you can bring about certain changes depending upon the requirement. And the fourth level, when you become a leader, as a HR leader, you can devise new practices and systems which is going to contribute to employee happiness, satisfaction and lead to better performance, right. So, when you are talking about proficiency level, you have to see that it is going to vary from job to job, and depending upon the kind of competencies you have selected, you also need to see that what is the level of competencies that is required by a person in a given job, right. Now, once you have identified the competency proficiency level, then you move to the next level. See, this is for a given job, another job. Okay. The role is sales representative. He is in sales function, he is a frontline manager. So, this is the idea of the job, we do not need to look into it. This is a hypothetical example. Now, if you look at this proficiency level, critical and important and preferred. Okay. At the basic awareness level, what are the activities that is required by him? What he should need to understand is, he should be able to differentiate, he should have PCA skills, software knowledge, planning and execution, analytical skills, quality orientation. These are the basic awareness. Move to the next level, retail preference standards, operational software management, product knowledge, customer knowledge. These are the critical. Okay. Then consumer knowledge, market knowledge, trade relations, customer orientation, these are important, right. Then expert, selling skills, distribution expansion, claims making. Okay. It means you do not require a competency at this level. As a sales representative, if you move to this level, this is the highest level, right. So, as a sales person, you require competency at level 3 here only, okay. And what is preferred is creativity, because that helps you to contribute better, right. So, you need to identify the criticality and importance related to particular role here, like it is a sales representative, and then you identify the criticality. So, criticality and proficiency level are important, right, and that is how we go about identifying the behavioral skills. Okay. So, we are not going to identify only the technical or functional skills, but you also need to identify associated with the job, that is the behavioral skills and generic skills, all kind of skills. Look at this. Okay. This is related to sales and distribution. So, this is the behavioral responsibility, the business responsibility, this is the divisional responsibility, this is the regional responsibility, the area responsibility, that is the frontline sales. Now, if you look at this, these are 4 different jobs at different levels, right. So, he could be a manager, he is responsible for the business. He could be a divisional manager, he could be a regional manager, he could be area representative, he could be a front sales line. So, if you look at different kind of jobs, okay, so the kind of functional skills that would require at different levels would be different, right. So, what you are going to identify at this level is competencies that is associated with different kind of jobs, and also the level of competencies that is associated with different kind of jobs, right. So, you can see in this that the level of competencies that is required for different kind of jobs varies. For example, if you look at area manager and frontline sales representative, okay. In certain cases you will find it is same, but in certain cases you will find it is different, right. It means, in some cases you require certain competencies, in some cases you do not require certain competencies, but you will also find some cases you will have there is a overlap of skills. It means that those skills are going to be there for this kind of role. For sales, yes, you have to have selling skills and you need to meet sales targets, and this, for example, distribution and expansion. This is a competence which requires at 3 levels, but here if you look at the proficiency level, it will go down or it will go up depending upon the level at which you are working, right. For example, if you look at selling skills, here you are responsible for the targets, but what is the competency that is required? As area manager, your selling skills, so that you can meet the target of the region, right. And as a front line sales representative, you are supposed to see that you are having those selling skills which helps you to meet the target individually at your level, right. See, this is another example that I have taken. The role is marketing. In this example, you can see what is happening. Okay. At different level, what are the different kind of activities that you are going to have? So, personal computer skills everybody requires. At higher level, as a leader, you require marketing strategy, brand management, media management, and these kind of things. These are the skills that is required. At the managerial level, you require these kind of skills. You are going to monitor profit, you have developed market plan, you are going to track competitors, right. You are going to help in brand building exercise and these kind of things. And an executive engineer, basically you are going to do these kind of things. So, you see that at different levels the role varies. Okay. What I am trying to communicate is through these examples, whether it is a sales job or marketing job or an HR job, that at different levels you may require the same competencies, but the level of competency is going to vary across these levels, right. For example, if you are a coordinator, probably you would require these kind of competencies. Okay. And then once you identify these competencies, you have to see that level of competencies or level of proficiency related to these competencies that is required for the job, need to look into, right. Look at another important area, HR, since we are discussing about HRD. So, you see that what are the functional skills that is required for the role of human resources. So, if you are an HR leader, these are the responsibilities. If you are a manager, HR manager, if you are a HR executive, if you are simply coordinating the activities in the department, then you require these kind of skills. It means the competency level, the level of competencies may be varying, but you can also see the quantum of competencies in the number of competencies are moving up as you move up in the hierarchy. Okay. So, these are the competencies for an HR leader. Being a global leader, okay, he must understand finances, must understand the labor laws, okay, should be good in business, understanding business and HR processes, right. Okay, should be able to analyze different kind of activities, how are you going to manage compensation and rewards at a whole level, what is your talent management approach, right. So, these are required for the leaders. So, these are the competencies against which you are going to be evaluated. So, that is the role matrix. Then once these competencies are identified, then you try to see that how critical and important each one of them are. Then next level what you are going to do? You are going to identify that what is the proficiency level that is required in HR leader for all these competencies, right. And that is how we try to identify competencies of the people associated with a particular role. So, here I have taken 3 examples, sales job, marketing job and also an HR job, to explain how we go about identify the functional skills required for different kind of roles. Thank you very much.